Hello and welcome to Doing Good in the Community with a Lot of Good. I'm your host, Yvette Walker. This show highlights nonprofits, ministries, and individuals doing good in the communities around us. Each show is brought to you by A Lot of Good, a 501c3 nonprofit based in Upland, California that works with others to provide goods and support to families dealing with a crisis. By working with partners in the community, outlying areas, and hospitals across Southern California, A Lot of Good lives the words of its tagline. Together, we do a lot of good. Living in California is financially challenging, even in non-pandemic times. There are a lot of good people trying to build a life for themselves and break the cycle of poverty. But it's a struggle, financially and emotionally. Luckily, for many in the Inland Empire, there is an organization making significant strides in making changes that can lead to generational changes for our neighbors and friends. That organization is Hope Through Housing, and today I'm chatting with Gregory Bradbard, Executive Director of Hope Through Housing located in Rancho Cucamonga. Is it okay if I call you Greg?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Well, the first question has to be, how and why did Hope Through Housing start?
Well, Hope Through Housing started about 23 years ago, and it's in conjunction with National Core, and so we share the same founders. National Core is one of the nation's largest nonprofit affordable housing developers and operators, which means that we have properties throughout Southern California. But the mission is really far beyond just housing. It's really about using housing as a platform to elevate the health, the well-being, and the self-sufficiency of our residents. And that's where the Hope Through Housing Foundation comes in. So 23 years ago, they realized, we need, in order to really empower our residents to the next level, we need to not just provide housing, we need to provide social services as well.
Right.
And that's when the Hope Through Housing Foundation was created.
And National Core and Hope Through Housing each have specific interests. What does each one do, and how does that affect the other?
Yeah, so like I said, National Core is really the housing element, and so we both build and operate affordable housing development. So those are all affordable apartment units for low-income families and seniors. And we have about 80 total apartment communities throughout Southern California, Florida, and Texas, and serve about 25,000 residents in total. And that's really the National Core side, is providing safe, stable housing for our families. Hope Through Housing, then's role is in each of those communities. We have a community center. Imagine kind of a multi-purpose room.
Okay.
And in that community center, we can offer a whole array of different services, programs, resources for our residents to help them reach their goals in a number of different areas.
How many families are living in National Core properties in the Southern California area, and how many of them are getting assistance from Hope Through Housing?
Yeah, that's great. So we have about 7,000 households who live in National Core properties across Southern California. That includes Los Angeles County, the Inland Empire, Orange County, and San Diego County as well. And all of our services are available to all of those families. On an annual basis, in terms of individuals, we have about 10,000 individuals this last year in 2020 who took advantage or benefited from some kind of service coming from the Hope Through Housing Foundation. And obviously this last year with COVID was very different. We could talk all about that, but every day we were there responding to the needs of our residents.
So from what I've heard about the Hope Through Housing initiative, there are three main objectives. Can you elaborate on them and how these programs can make a difference?
Sure, yeah. So everything we do falls into one of three pillars, as we call them. And so the first pillar is what we call Building Bright Futures. It's focused on our youth. And if you look at the mission of the Hope Through Housing Foundation, it's to break the generational cycle of poverty. We know there's no better way to do that than to focus on our kids today, to make sure that they stay in school, they make good choices, they graduate, they go on and they get the college or career skills they need so they can ultimately earn a living wage job and break that cycle of poverty long term. And that's our goal, is that they're able to get to a place where they can support their families in the future and not look back and need our help. So we do that in a number of ways. We have some preschool programs on our sites. We have about 29 properties that have after-school programs available to those kids. And every day those kids can come in, they get homework help, they get a nutritious snack and exercise, and then they have positive role models there helping to build into their lives and keep them on the right track. And then we also launched some teen programs this last year. So that's all the first pillar. The second pillar is focused on our families and adults. It's really focused on economic mobility. And so the goal there is really twofold. One is employment, to help our adults to get back to work or to get into work. That could be job placement, it could be resume writing, it could be job training for them. And so we offer both workshops and one-on-one financial counseling for our residents focused on budgeting, credit, debt consolidation, savings, and even helping our residents move to home ownership. And then the last pillar is focused on our seniors. About 30% of our residents are seniors. Most of them are living on a fixed income. They're living on Social Security, which means even with the below market rent, because all of our residents pay rent, even with below market rent, they struggle to make ends meet. And so we help them with things like we usually have a monthly food pantry that allows them to access food and reduce their food budget. We'll connect them with transportation or medical care if they need it. We do some on-site fitness and nutrition classes. And then a lot of socialization for our seniors. The goal is to get them out of their apartments, interacting together to battle things like isolation, depression, and dementia.
So what is the biggest shortfall that you're facing right now at Hope through Housing?
Great question. Like every nonprofit, I think it's going to fall into kind of two categories, generally. One, is the financial resources. The other are the people resources. Like every organization, we're always seeing more needs than we have the ability to meet. And so we work with, fortunately, we have companies who we work with, foundations, individuals, very small amount of government funding, but all of that coming together allows us to do the work that we do. And so it's really a matter of continuing to build those partnerships. And sometimes those are financial partnerships. Other times it's other nonprofit organizations like A Lot of Good, who we partner with to help bring additional resources to our residents. So for instance, that could be a university where we have interns coming into work on our properties. It could be a hospital that's bringing health education to our residents. So it's really just, in terms of the unmet need, continue to build those partnerships and those resources to help us expand and provide greater support to the thousands of residents who we're serving.
So there are hundreds of nonprofits working to make an impact in the community, providing everything from counseling to clothing, food to financial assistance and more. Each has its own way of holding itself to a core value or a vision statement. How do you at Hope through Housing measure the outcomes of your efforts?
Yeah, and I can answer that in a couple levels. First of all, at the housing level, it's just housing stability. If you look at where a lot of these families came from, they often came from a place where they were struggling to make ends meet. Many of our family residents are a single mom or dad with a couple of kids struggling to put food on the table, and oftentimes had to move around quite frequently, may not have lived in a great neighborhood, might not have felt safe there. Every time they moved, their kids would have to change schools again and fall further behind academically. So the first piece is just housing stability, giving these families a place where they can live, they're safe, they're stable, they can afford the rent long term. And we know that provides a kind of a powerful impact for our residents. Secondly, in terms of the programs that I talked to you about, we measure all of those programs for our kids. It's looking at their grades and looking at how they're doing in school, how many of them graduate and go off to college. For our families, particularly in our financial coaching program, we actually measure baseline data. So we look when they come in to say, hey, how much are you earning today? What's your debt look like? What's your credit score look like? And then we look at that over time. And what we see is that those residents do increase their credit scores, they decrease their debt, and they're able to increase their savings while they're working with us. And with our seniors, it's really a matter for them of independent living, giving them the tools to be able to live on their own, happy and healthy in their own apartment as long as possible. So keeping them out of assisted living or a hospital, giving them the support they need to live right in their own apartment.
Greg, you've had quite a career in the nonprofit industry here in Southern California. What made you decide to join Hope Through Housing?
I've been in other organizations where it's a struggle sometimes to reach those people who need our help the most. And in this case, we have, in each of our properties, the ability to deliver resources directly to these families, to build relationships with them, to bring them tools that they maybe never knew existed. And one of the things we often say, particularly as you talk about families in poverty, We often don't know what we don't know. And there's often resources and opportunities that are available to our families that they had no idea were available to them. And we have the opportunity to bring that to them.
Looking forward, what does the future look like for Hope Through Housing, for example? Are there more expansion of target areas or more focus on those looking to break the poverty cycle?
Yeah, so the bad news is there's a huge housing crisis in California. Homelessness is a piece of that, but just housing of all types, is needed across California. The good news is we're part of that solution, and so National Corps in particular has a really strong pipeline building new units across Southern California. We actually just completed construction on new development in Ontario. We have others in San Bernardino, and I wish I could tell you that's enough. The reality is we still need more affordable housing for the many families out there. Typically, our apartments have a waiting list of 2 to 6 years. And that just shows you the demand for this housing. So the good news is we're expanding it, and every time we build a new property, we're able to add new staff to support that property and new programs for those kids, families, and seniors as well.
It's phenomenal. With the scores of families receiving support from your organization, can you share a story about one case of a family that stands out in your mind?
Last year during COVID, a lot of our focus went to basic needs, particularly with our seniors. Suddenly, we know the seniors were the first ones who were told kind of public health guidance, stay home, don't go out, take care of yourselves. And a lot of our seniors were scared. They were homebound. They might not have had other family to take care of them, which means we kind of provided that lifeline. And a lot of what we did was delivering food door to door, food, toilet paper, other essentials to make sure that they were cared for during this time. And I was at one of our properties actually in the Coachella Valley. It's called Dumosa Village, and was with a staff member, some others. And we had a partnership that provided a brown paper bag with, it had a sandwich in it and a bowl of soup. It was from a local restaurant who donated it. And we were going door to door taking those to our seniors, and typically they'd come, open the door, say thank you so much. And there was one woman in particular, and she opened the door and she says, thank you. She said, do you have just a minute? And we said, sure. And she said, do you want to come in? That's COVID time. So we said politely, no, it's okay. And she said, well, I want to show you my pantry and my refrigerator. She said, I'm almost out. She said, I'm almost out of food. She said, I have some soda, some water, and a half of a can of Pringles. And she takes the paper bag and she looks in, but she goes, but this is great. Because she said, this will get me through today. And she gives me the soup, and she said, and the sandwich will get me through tomorrow. And I'll tell you, I was standing in the hallway listening to her, and it became very real in that moment. And of course, we made sure we didn't just leave her with the sandwich and soup. We made sure she had groceries by the end of the day. And then, because we knew she had that need, we could continue to follow up to make sure that she had the food that she needed.
I was informed that Hope Through Housing is scheduled to be a Spotlight community partner. How did the relationship with A Lot of Good start?
Yeah, well, fortunately, I've had the pleasure of knowing Tony and Sandy Capelli, for some years, and know the work that they've done previously. Tony reached out and knew the work of Hope Through Housing and saw alignment there. And we're excited about this new venture for both of us, and just seeing the benefit to our residents and the potential benefit as we work together.
Very good. I'm sure that with as much as National Corps and Hope Through Housing have going on, the workload is quite large. Aside from the existing staff that is doing such an amazing job with the families, kids, and seniors, are there opportunities for individuals to volunteer their time and talents? And if there are, how can they do that?
Absolutely. Yeah, so there's a number of different ways, and what I'd say is the best thing is if somebody's interested, contact us, and we're often, looking to be kind of the matchmaker and figure out, okay, based on your interests, let's find the best place to plug you in. There are some opportunities throughout the year. Some of our needs are during the summer. We do big back to school drives, and so we need donations of just school supplies. That could be a notebook, a backpack, to send kids back to school on the right foot. We also need volunteers to come out to events like that, where we do like a summertime barbecue, just to lend an extra hand as we're doing those. We also, in our youth programs, sometimes can use extra volunteers in our after-school programs. But really, it's about building into the lives of those kids. And we do something we call career conversations, where we're always looking for business people in the community to come to talk with our youth about not just their job, but their career path and their industry to help these kids see, you know, the educational path that was required to get them to where they are today, and also to help open these kids' eyes to the many different types of jobs and careers that are out there, whereas they've maybe never seen that before. So that's just a couple examples, and there's a lot of different ways that people can volunteer.
Right. A lot of good is providing gift cards to Hope Through Housing, as well as working to address other needs. How important is this partnership, and how does it improve what Hope Through Housing does?
Yeah, you know, it's great because, you know, we don't often have partners who help with some of the basic emergency needs of our residents. And I say emergency because a lot of times it's very short term. You know, if there is a need for, you know, clothing. It could be clothing for a job interview. It could be clothing for, you know, kids. A lot of times when residents move into our property, they might not have what they need for the home, and so the gift cards and the ability for them to shop and to get product from the organization is going to be so powerful.
The work that you and your organization is doing is truly remarkable, and I'm sure that more people need help. How can individuals make financial contributions to support your good works?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. So our website is always the easiest way. That's just www.hthf.org, as in Hope Through Housing Foundation.org. They can visit there. And you know, I've talked about a couple things. You can contribute specifically to support our youth, our Building Bright Futures work. Secondly, what we call Pathways to Economic Empowerment, which is all the economic mobility work for our families, or to help our seniors as well. And we also have special things like welcome baskets. So when residents move in, we'll give them a basket with some of the household supplies, not just to welcome them, but we also use it as an opportunity to build a relationship with those residents so that we can offer the support I've been talking about.
Oh, that's wonderful. So, okay, Greg, it's time for the last question. If you wanted the people who watch this video to take one thing with them to think about, thought or insight or reason to support Hope Through Housing, what would that be?
Yeah, you know, it's a great question, Yvette, and you know, I think the one thing I would want people to hear is that I think a lot of times we can hear about homelessness, the housing crisis, and think that's just too big. Like, how can I touch that? How can I be part of that? And maybe it's just too big for me to be a part of. And what I'd want people to know is you absolutely can, you know, through organizations like Hope Through Housing and National Core. And we're not the only ones doing it. You know, there's a lot of other great organizations out there as well. But through volunteering, even donating a few dollars, every dollar counts and adds up. So for them to know that they really can make a difference for those residents. And like I said before, it's really not just about housing, it's really about life transformation and the support that comes with that.
Phenomenal. Well, Greg, thank you so much for sharing about Hope Through Housing. It's an amazing organization that is doing great things here in our community.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Even though my time chatting with Greg is over, you can start your time with them right now and impact lives. But you need to take action. The first action is to go to their website, get more information, and support them however you can. The web address is hthf.org, or you can call them at 909-442-4500. And don't forget to check out alotofgood.org and visit A Lot of Good thrift store, open 7 days a week right here in Upland, California. You can find links to Hope Through Housing and A Lot of Good in the information section below. Leave your comments. Remember to subscribe, like, and follow A Lot of Good and A Lot of Good Thrift on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Until next time, this is Yvette Walker for A Lot of Good, doing good in the community. Remember, together we do a lot of good. See you soon.